Good afternoon. Welcome to the IET panels that are playing out this afternoon. My name is Ian Nock. I'm the chair of the Institute of Engineering and Technology Media Technical Network, which is the part of the IET, the volunteer part of the IET that interacts with the community of engineers who are both members and non-members. We're here today actually to address overall a question which is the end of broadcast with a very clear question mark here. And we have three panels this afternoon which are focused invariably on the distribution and consumption side, the production side of video, and also then the platform positioning that we have from a few organizations. So what I would like to do is for this particular panel, which is focused on broadcast to IP impacts, I just want to give a brief sort of set of dates, which are very clear in my mind from my background working in the TV industry since the 90s, of things that have made a stick out as a key points for this beginning and move through from traditional broadcast to IP-based delivery, all the way back to the original web TV back in the mid-90s. And these dates really show an evolution over many years from what was only just about technically possible then in terms of postage stamp video, if any of you remember. In fact, I remember personally being involved in the IP distribution of a Super Bowl event, which was fantastic if you could watch it at 160 pixels by 320 pixels. Very, very high quality at that time. But we have a number of big things that have occurred slowly over time where we've now got to the point where today we actually have competitive full-service television platforms that are out there today in terms of YouTube TV, in terms of Sling TV, in terms of Direct TV in the US. Magine in Europe has been in that respect. We have Zatu. We have many of these services which are really competing directly with the more traditional platforms that are available, from the European-wide companies like Liberty Global, Deutsche Telekom, through to also European operators like Sky TV on the satellite side. So this is where the transition has got, and we've got consumers who are really tagged onto this as the technology of the client devices has improved, right the way down to having the fact that we're all sat here today with our mini computers in our pockets, with high-resolution screens, with high-speed networking capability, delivering video for our entertainment wherever we are, whenever we are. But I really wanted to just give some brief sort of starting points as well. For why is this actually happening? Why is IP delivery suddenly catching, not suddenly yet, why is IP delivery catching on in consumers' minds? And I think the sort of news articles that you see pressed around are like this one on the screen at the moment, where here in the Netherlands, for example, you can get statistics where the vast majority of Dutch viewing time is non-linear. Aspects of that is from a PVR, I'm sure, but it is the fact that we're watching whenever we want to. There's also the fact that our viewing behaviours are changing to where we're watching wherever we want to. And also with multi-screen devices and main TVs, we're watching on whatever device we want to. So that's definitely one of the driving areas, I think, from the consumer catching on to IP-delivered video because they're watching it in that very, very flexible way. But the other trend we have from that changing consumer behavior, what the platform operators is doing. So here, we've had news reports in the last 12 to 18 months where operators like Sky have talked about OTT-based delivery of their content on their mainstream devices like Sky Q. And also where we have Direct TV in the US very clearly go out there and state that they've bought their last transponder. They are now going to migrate over the next 10 years from their full range of transponders today to a fully OTT delivered service in a 10-year time period. And that's quite ambitious to say that now, I guess, maybe, but we will hear from panelists in a little while about that and how they feel about that. But the other aspect, of course, comes from the fact that you don't have to have the network yourself. You can rely on high-speed broadband networks that have been deployed by many operators throughout the world. You can overlay your service on top, and of course, companies like Netflix really take advantage of this. right down to the fact that they actually work with ISPs to improve the performance of their delivery into these other networks, but without actually owning that infrastructure. And of course, the other key aspect as well is that we do actually have full service television platforms now operating over the top, which provide network PVR functionality. They provide catch-up services, restart services, live services, as well as access to watch the content on pretty much any device, from the one in your hand through to the one on your wall. And that's really setting the context of the panel we're going to have today. If I just ask them all to come up on stage, it'd be very good. So I'd like to introduce you in a little while, just a moment to the panelists here, who are basically going in the order of the chairs at least. We have Peter Siebert, who is the head of technology for DVB, and he will give us a very good view from a DVB perspective. We have Yvonne Thomas from DTG, who will also give her view, and also Andre Prahl from the Deutsche Television platform, who will present his views. I would like maybe to just give a brief introduction to each of you. So, Peter, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself?
Okay, very briefly, my name is Peter Siebert, and I work for DVB, and I do this now for 10 years. Thank you.
Okay, and Yvonne?
Yeah, my name is Yvonne Thomas from the DTG, the Digital TV Group in the UK. I'm a strategic technologist, and I look into the transition from hybrid to IPTV world.
So, good afternoon. My name is Andre Prahl. In my first job, I'm responsible for the program distribution of RTL's channels in Germany, so more technical oriented job. And my second job, which I'm representing today here, I'm chairman of the Deutsche TV platform, or German television platform, as you might call it in English, which is also dealing with any topic of the transition or transformation of broadcast to IP in Germany.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So what I'd like you to do now is to invite up Yvonne, who will come on first to give her views.
Thank you, Ian. So let's get up the slides. So good afternoon, everyone. As said, my name is Yvonne Thomas from the DTG. We are a members-driven organization in the UK, and we ensure that really the viewer experience of the end consumer is ensured in the digital age and digital television. We also ensure that interoperability is working for all and consumer TV sets and set-top boxes in the UK, so we collaborate a lot also with the manufacturers, content providers, of course. So we're like a center really to bring together manufacturers and platform providers, etc. To talk to each other and find consensus on how we move on in the industry. So if you can go to the next slide, or do you have a clicker? Okay. Perfect. So, you don't have to remember this, but just to show that we have quite of a history since the mid of the 90s, and of course we've gone through a lot of transition towards the digital transition, and of course we're interested of what's next. So there will be of course 5G, and everyone here at the IBC, but also when you've been at IFA in Berlin last week, I think you've seen that 5G is all over. And of course this will be an enabler for higher quality content, but also as well of streaming content. So all the platforms that we all know just come into our homes, and we also like to have them on our mobile phones as well, of course. So when we look, even though we have a focus, of course, on the UK, if we look at Europe a little bit, and we see that countries are moving into different directions. And as you can see, like France is quite towards IPTV world already, so the consumption is quite high on IP television. And the transition would be that everybody is kind of on the left side. So this is where we're working on. So in some countries, of course, there's much more work to do than in others. And this is due to circumstance, political reasons, regulations, Also technology is available on certain markets or not. So, and then a bit of statistics of the viewing behavior. I'm sure you've all seen this. However, if we look at this from the Gen Z perspective, they consume less of a broadcast video on demand content. They're going for the SVOD, really, for streaming content, really on the go as well on their phones. But still, let's say the overall population still consumes broadcast content, of course. But there's definitely a trend towards the streaming services, what we see. So what's happening really in the industry? We all know that content owners revoke their rights more and more. So from platforms, just keep them for themselves. So the best example currently is Disney Plus. It's quite clever. They want to build more of a family service. So they also own Marvel, which they've actually thought to give probably a separate service from the Disney movies. But at the end, when they combine everything on one platform, it's like a family service, really. It's something for the kids, for the parents, like for everyone. There's something there. And they combine it with being part of the fan club. They have their theme parks. They have their merchandise stuff that they can sell. So it's like a whole ecosystem, really, that they sell for a very low entry price, at least compared to other services. And I think this is where we will see by November, when it comes to Europe, when it's going to start, how it's really taking place, and how people will take it. So owning content and, of course, owning data as well, meaning being as close as possible to the consumer, is really like a gold. It's like a new currency. There's a survey in the UK that a maximum of 3 subscriptions would be acceptable for people. I'm sure you've more than 2 or 3 already. So there's Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO, now Disney Plus coming, whatever, your national streaming services as well. And this is just not acceptable for people in the UK. So the big question is, will we have this super aggregator who gets the rights from various streaming services to really have an experience for the viewer of just having one platform, like a single login, and I still can enjoy all the benefits of all these platforms that are available. So this is one of the big question for sure. So by having said this, we have as a DTT a manifesto on the IPTV transition. So there's also a link where you can just have a look at it. It includes a couple of factors and aspects that we like to consider. Of course, we need to ensure the viewer experience, which is really at the center. So looking at IPTV has 2 aspects. One is the technology. So the underlying technology will be replaced. But the second is, what about the viewer experience, the usability really of how we watch content. So will we make IPTV work like we know broadcast nowadays? So is it really like a channel based and we just have one button on the remote control where we scroll through? Or is it really done by a recommendation system or whatever? So this is, I think, a big question. And myself, I watch Netflix, but I use my iPad, I use really the application to create my watch list. I hate doing this on my television. So this is up to the viewer experience that we have. And what am I actually doing? I'm creating my own watch list, so I can just lean back and chill and just, be kind of channel-based, but my own channel. So I bet a lot of you do the same. So exactly this view experience, I think, what we need to transition from broadcast towards IPTV. But the big question is also, there can be something new, like Apple has introduced just to slide on a screen. This behavior, we all know about it, it's very intuitive to us, but it hasn't been introduced before. So either we reinvent something new like this, or we just want to stick to the experience we have already. Oops. So you don't have to read all of this, but again, this is just to show that how content is being distributed and that those, let's say, alliances are building up, and big content owners, they try to get even more content and own the content. So this is just hugely important to have this network and also provide this experience then to the consumer. Thank you. I think I'm going to Peter now.
Okay, it's my turn. As I said before, I'm Peter Siebert. I work for DVB. We do the standards for television in Europe. And here is my first slide. And on this slide you see Mr. Anthony Rose. He is the father of YouTube, YouView in the UK. And in 2007 he made a prediction. And the prediction is that by 2000XX, broadcast will be dead. And he meant by 2012. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are in the year 2019. We still watch television. Anthony Rose did 3 errors. First error, his prediction was wrong. Second error, he gave an absolute number for his prediction, which is always bad, because then you can quote him, on this, And I forgot the third thing he did wrong. Okay, so what is the situation in Europe? And these are the numbers from all European markets. Basically, people still watch television. And over the last years, the average viewing time per user has not changed much. Of course, this is an average over all European markets and all age groups. When you look into different markets and different age groups, you will see some trends in different countries. Oops. This is the same slide as Yvonne has presented, just in a different clothing. And it basically shows that over the years, broadcast is going down and streaming content is going up. Just one aspect, when you look at this green one, that's DVDs. DVDs is still being used and DVD is still pretty stable. Okay, another interesting aspect is what kind of device are people using to use streamed content. And everybody says we use mobile devices for this, but that's not true. The most popular device with increasing popularity is a television set, the smart TV set. And tablets and smartphones play a role, but actually a quite minor role. And the big loser over time is a PC. So in former times we watched PC, but now we go to the smart TV. And I think that's clear. The smart TV gives us the best picture. We have 4K, we have high dynamic range, we have a marvelous audio system with next generation audio around it. So people consume content on the device which gives them the best quality of experience. Okay, and here are some numbers from the UK, which is an important market. And these are the live versus streamed viewing of live content. So it's broadcast versus streamed viewing of live content. And you see, okay, the streamed one, that's this one here, is going up. The broadcast is going down, but it's a slow trend. And I made a prediction that the curves will intersect in 2023. So still some time to go. And this is an example of a revolutionary change. This is what happened to the visitors of American cinemas after Second World War when television came up. So there was a drastic, within a short period of time, there was a drastic decrease of people going to the cinema. And actually the cinemas never recovered from this. But on the other side, they also did not die. So we still have cinemas and we still go and watch movies in cinemas. And maybe another interesting aspect, and I've stolen this picture from Tom Morrott from IHS, is the cost of streaming content for the broadcaster, because somebody has to pay for the infrastructure and for the CDN, and basically the cost per gigabyte is now a little bit below 0.1 pence, and it's pretty stable there. So it's also interesting to see that between North America and US, basically the prices are now about the same. So this seems to be a lower threshold where you cannot go much beyond. And of course, he also made a calculation, basically that comparing the cost of satellite versus comparing the cost of OTT. And actually, very soon, from a few thousand viewers on, satellite broadcast is more cost efficient than going through an OTT delivery network for popular broadcast live content. And this, I think, is my last slide. This shows how many people are actually using broadband in Germany, which is about 84%. On the other side, you should know that 98% of the households in Germany are passed by a broadband connection. So we have the interesting situation that broadband connection is offered to nearly all households, but not all households decide to take broadband. And there are, of course, two reasons for this. Either you're too poor to pay for the broadcast fees. When you're living on social welfare, you don't have the money to do this. Or second, you're not able to handle the technology. So my mother is 88. She will never touch a keyboard. She is happy with the remote control of her television, and that's all she needs. And this is the end of my slides. Just to give you a conclusion, my personal conclusion on this. So yes, I think that broadband delivery will become more important in the future, but this does not mean that broadcast will disappear overnight. We human beings have invented many storytelling mechanisms. We read to our children, we read books, we go to the theater, we go to the cinema, we watch television, we watch it broadcast and broadband. And I think so far no storytelling mechanism has died. They are all still existing, so they will coexist. The weight will change, but broadband will stay, and we'll be living happily together with broadcast will stay and will heavily live together with broadband. And we from DVB, we make the specifications for all use cases. Of course, you know us from the broadcast standards. We have done a lot of work for the hybrid use case, broadband and broadcast. And now we are focusing on the internet delivery. That's why we have invented DVBI. And if you want to see what DVBI is, and the I stands for internet, come to our booth in Hall 1. Thank you very much.
Ich bleib hier, ne? Yeah. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, my name is Andre Prahl. I'm representing, and I hope I will get one slide. I don't have any further slides. I'm representing German TV platform, as we say in German, Deutsche TV Plattform, which is a non-profit organization. It's existing since 1990, so next year we're gonna celebrate our 30th anniversary, and we were founded as the German HD TV platform back in 1990. And it almost took 20 years to complete the first mission in order to bring HD TV to the market. So we're trying to be quicker, and we're trying to be broader, because something is really happening in the distribution market, in the technology market, in the way people consume their media and their video. We used to be very broadcast oriented. We had transitions from DVB-S to DVB-S2. We had transitions from DVB-T to DVB-T2. We had developments like HBB-TV, for example, which tries to bridge broadcast to broadband. But what we saw was that the broadcast topics, the specific technology-oriented topics that deal with broadcast, decreased over the time, and that new technology, of course based on the internet, raised. And the form we organized our association followed, of course, that trend, so that as maybe a glance or a first impression on what the technology change means for such broad organizations like German TV platform is that we 2 years ago cut off and ended all working groups dealing with broadcast topics. So it's a form of technology that we of course monitor and maybe have to also support when it comes to further changes, like for example when SD broadcast distribution will be shut off one day, but the core of technology and the core of distribution moved from broadcast to broadband. So we set up groups like Media over IP, which is now dealing with questions: do we have, for example, enough bandwidth in Germany for this massive change of consumer behavior coming from linear mass media consumption to individual unicast, technology speaking, consumption via the internet? Do we have enough Wi-Fi frequencies? This is a question really that maybe if you have a personal experience by trying to connect your iPad to the Netflix UHD service, you see that maybe you're hooked somewhere where you don't have enough bandwidth to consume this. And what does this mean? For example, also for the digital divide between the urban and the rural areas in a country like Germany. And all those technical topics we are dealing with. And this is what we call the physical layer. Like to say, how is media and how is data transported via the various infrastructures to the consumer. And the second pillar is the application layer. So how do operating systems look like? How do APIs look like? How is middleware constructed in order to represent all these various possibilities of media to the end consumer? And of course, and this is where we also work together very closely with DTG, is what we call the quality layer. It's like, how is video quality, UHD, how is audio quality, enhanced audio system, how is this developing? And we try to give some impulses to the market. Like we, for example, set up together the so-called plug fests in the Ultra HD sphere, where manufacturers come together and try to bring their devices together and try to make them work together to provide interoperability between those devices, so that if you're sure when you buy a device that says it's Ultra HD capable, that this player connects to this TV set. And this is where we work together on a technical basis very intensively together. So there's a whole broad broad bandwidth of topics which have undertaken a tremendous change from broadcast to broadband, which reflects in the organization of Deutsche TV platform, and people recognize it. We had last week announced that Google will become a member, or is a member of Deutsche TV platform, because also topics like addressable TV, where the internet of course massively interferes into distribution of TV channels, is of course of interest to such companies as Google as well. And this is a good signal of course for such broad organizations. But is it a good signal for the broadcast industry? Question mark. And I think this is what we're going to discuss today.
Thank you very much. So now we come to the panel part of it, and I have some specific questions and aspects of this. I think you all answered it to an extent within your presentations, but I think it would be good to bring together that view in a very simple way of really what time period are you seeing a growth of IP delivery video for big screen, whatever screen, to the extent that it will become the majority consumption model for consumers today? So, Andre.
Well, time frame is a difficult question, and you can only get a wrong guess on that, I think. But I think although let's say the technology topics which we're dealing with are more or less based on the internet and everything that is associated with it, the broadcast technology I think will remain for a very long period of time, and I'm really doubting whether it will end at all at some day, because the advantage and the efficiency that broadcast provides, I think, is very good indeed. And from a commercial perspective, if you have like the famous example of the World Cup final in football, I doubt whether there will be any technology being capable of transmitting one signal to so many users in the same way and in the same quality without any interference, and with this perfect way broadcast does today. So I think that the share of consumption time, of course, will decrease over the time. It will lose maybe a lot of traction in form of how many people do consume and what time do they use for broadcast. But I think it will never disappear. That's my prediction.
Okay. And just to clarify, because Peter, you had a date in an extrapolation based on the data.
That
I'd like to restate that date.
Empirical data extrapolated in the future, so it's not a prediction, just to make this clear. But in principle, I'd 100% agree to what Andre has said. So it will take a long time, if ever. And just one point to mention here, I think it was only last year that in Germany we switched off analog PAL transmission in the cable networks. So sometimes technology lives much longer than you think. Okay, on the other side, we switched off DVB-T after 12 years, but that's a different story, But I think Andre made a very good summary of how the future for broadcast looks like.
Okay, and Yvonne?
Yeah, difficult question, but I think it really depends who you ask. Like, so my parents' generation that are really used to the linear television, they might not accept a non-linear world or an all-IP world. So this comes back really to this user experience, even though they probably don't mind what technology is underneath. So if we have to wait for this generation kind of to step out at some point, then we will be at about 2040. When we look at technology, it will be rather sooner than later. But I mean, of course, we talk a lot to people, and it ranges from 2024, so 5 years' time, to 2040. My personal opinion is about 2030. We'll have a switchover.
Okay. So, and going back through really, and maybe starting with you, Yvonne, again, how do you see viewing habits changing that and making those dates come in a little bit further and quicker than maybe people think? Maybe because at the end of the day, humans have this habit of introducing non-linearities into the conversation, as well as the financial impacts of running a television platform. Is there something that will alter or rapidly accelerate those extrapolations or estimates that such as Peter's provided?
I mean, we all have to learn, so from the industry, but also as a consumer, we really have to learn what it means to go to IP. For especially national broadcasters, it will be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to run two platforms in parallel, so to have the broadcast and broadband really financed, which is a lot easier for those platforms that are already natively IP, like Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu and so on, because they already got the infrastructure and they can efficiently produce content. They have one single documentary that they produce once, but they kind of spread it to several countries, so just create different versions for several countries, which is great. It's usually efficient, but a national broadcaster can't do this, obviously. So I think there will be really the challenge for the nationalities and for the national focus, which is hugely important to have this local content available as well. So I probably don't have the final answer, but just a couple of thoughts on this.
Okay. So Peter, do you think there's going to be something that will change that linear extrapolation, bring it in quicker, or even slow it down?
I mean, I think sometimes people mixing up two aspects. And one aspect is live broadcast, and the other aspect is, one aspect is linear broadcast, and the other is non-linear content. And I was speaking here about the linear content, so what we also call classically as broadcast. And I think for broadcast, I believe in the prediction or in the extrapolation I've done. When it comes to non-linear content, we have seen basically over the last years an explosion of using services like Netflix, just to mention the most popular of these services. And I think this will remain. OTT delivery has given us the technical option to basically look what we want at the time that we want to see it, and people are making use of it. So this is just a new mechanism of storytelling available to us human beings, and we embrace it. But on the other side, we also embrace broadcast, because sometimes we come home and we don't want to make a decision. We don't want to make a conscious decision what to watch next. And so we just switch on the television and let us be surprised what is there. So we are very grateful to the RTLs of this world to give us the broadband content. And I think there is room enough for both form of storytellings. So both system will remain. And yes, maybe there will be more time spent on non-linear forms in the future, but the linear television will not be forgotten.
Okay. And Andre?
Well, I always have my difficulties with naming linear and non-linear. I mean, technically speaking, both is linear. It's running at a constant speed, so there's no physical difference between them. I think what makes it different is a form of personalization. So that everybody is getting the same content at the same time. This is the one, and everybody's getting different content at another time. This is the other one. And I think that we are not yet at a point where we see the end of that development. I think there is a lot of room for a lean-back service, which is maybe a bit personalized to your viewing habits, to your taste and what you would like to see, but it's also containing a form of, well, the broadcaster presents something to you, what the broadcaster thinks you should see. And there are forms of mixtures to that. And I think that, for example, in the curation of content, in the form whether you provide playlists for individual target groups, for example, there's much room for development, and there's also much room, I think, for the interaction of broadcast and broadband. If I look, for example, to the discussion on 5G we have in Germany, where we say, is there room for a broadcast layer within the 5G mobile technology? Because it's not only the broadcasters who might like to have it, it's also maybe a mobile operator that says, when I am in control on the viewership, and if I am in control of what has happened on the screens, then I have to be cost efficient with my form of distribution, and then I would most probably also have to use broadcast technology. It's not that I'm saying that the broadcasters will be in control of broadcast technology. It might be somebody else that just buys in content and distributes it via this technology, like, for example, 5G broadcast. So it will be a mixture of technologies. A core of broadcast, I think, will prevail. And I think we have not seen yet the end of the media appearance towards the end consumer. There will be definitely in other forms of mixtures between broadcasts and personalized content, which I think will present a future that we today really cannot really imagine what will be in 10 or 20 years.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I guess, is there any last word that anyone would like to give before we finish for the session?
So probably just to mention that every content provider just needs to make this change, whether they go a hybrid model or pure all IP model, but it certainly, to survive, needs to move to IP. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. We will have another session starting in a few minutes at 3 o'clock. Thank you for your time.